Nobody talks about the cruelest part of revenge. Not the betrayals, not the murders, not even the lies. The cruelest part was that Emily Thorne finally found the one person who understood every broken piece of her. And the writers had to kill him just so the ending could happen. Because if Aiden survived, Jack never stood a chance. And deep down, the fans knew it too. Before we start, comment below. Who should Emily have ended up with, Jack, Daniel, or Aiden? And if you love emotional revenge stories, betrayal breakdowns, and character deep dives that hit harder than the actual finale, subscribe now. Because this story? It gets painful. The love story that revenge destroyed. The first time most people watched Revenge, they thought they understood the story. A little girl loses her father. Rich people destroy her life. Years later, she comes back to ruin them all. Simple, clean, satisfying. But the older fans got, the more they realized that wasn't actually the story. Because revenge was never really about destroying enemies. It was about what revenge destroys inside you. And nobody represented that better than Emily Thorne. Or Amanda Clark, depending on which version of her you believed was real. That was always the tragedy of her character. She spent so many years pretending to be someone else, that eventually even the audience forgot who she used to be. But there was one person who never forgot. Jack Porter, the boy from the beach, the childhood love, the safe place, the future she lost before she was even old enough to understand what love was. And for years, fans believed the story would always lead back to him. Because television trains people to think childhood love is destiny. The innocent boy, the innocent girl, separated by tragedy, reunited years later. That's supposed to be the happy ending, right? That's what everyone thought in Season 1. Back then, Jack represented something pure, something untouched by lies. While Emily manipulated billionaires, destroyed marriages, framed enemies, and emotionally dismantled everyone around her, Jack stayed human. He worked at the bar, raised his brother, protected people, loved honestly, and every time Emily looked at him, you could see Amanda Clark trying to breathe again underneath the mask. That was the magic of Season 1. Not the revenge plots, not the takedowns, the emotional conflict, because every scene with Jack forced Emily to remember who she used to be. And that terrified her. People forget how lonely Emily actually was. Yes, she was beautiful, rich, intelligent, powerful, but emotionally, she was starving. Every morning she woke up inside a mansion built from hatred. Every conversation was calculated. Every smile was fake. Every relationship was strategic. Even her identity wasn't hers. Imagine living like that. Imagine waking up every day knowing your entire personality is a weapon. That's why the small moments mattered. The tiny moments, the looks, the pauses, the beach memories, the quiet conversations. Those scenes mattered because they were the only moments Emily stopped feeling like a machine. And Jack was the reason. At least in the beginning. That's why audiences rooted for him. Not because he was exciting, but because he represented peace. He represented home. But there was a problem nobody noticed at first. Jack loved Amanda Clark. Emily Thorne was not Amanda Clark anymore. And the deeper the series went, the more obvious that became. At first, the cracks were small. Tiny emotional fractures hidden underneath romantic tension. You'd see Jack looking at her with confusion sometimes, like he recognized her face, but not her soul, because the woman standing in front of him wasn't the little girl from the beach anymore. That girl had died years ago. The real Amanda Clark was shaped by trauma, by isolation, by rage, by training, by obsession, and revenge changed her in ways Jack could never truly understand. But back then, fans ignored the warning signs because nostalgia is powerful. People don't just root for relationship, they root for memories. And Jack represented memory. The fantasy of returning to innocence. The fantasy that maybe trauma hadn't changed everything permanently. But then Amanda arrived. The fake Amanda. And strangely, that's when the truth about Jack started revealing itself. Because for the first time, he was with someone who gave him genuine emotional warmth every single day. Someone present. Someone emotionally available. Someone capable of building a real life with him. And despite all the lies surrounding her identity, their love became real. Painfully real. That's what made the storyline complicated. Jack wasn't forcing himself to love her. He truly loved her. You could see it in the quiet scenes. The domestic moments. The way he smiled around her. The softness in his voice. For once, Jack wasn't chasing a ghost from childhood. He was building a future with someone standing right beside him. And Amanda changed him. She made him lighter. Happier. More open. Even viewers who originally wanted Emily and Jack together started noticing it. There was peace in that relationship. Actual peace. Something Emily never brought into his life. Because every time Emily entered a room, danger followed. Secrets followed. Manipulation followed. Jack may have loved Amanda Clark, but Emily Thorne always came with destruction attached. And subconsciously, Jack knew it. That's why their relationship always felt emotionally uneven after season 1. Emily looked at Jack like he was salvation. Jack looked at Emily like she was a mystery he couldn't solve anymore. That difference matters. Because relationships cannot survive on memory alone. And slowly, painfully, the show started exposing that reality. Meanwhile, Daniel Grayson represented something completely different. If Jack represented the past, Daniel represented temptation. At first, viewers underestimated him. They thought he was just another rich boy target. Another pawn. Another victim. But season 1 Daniel had something surprisingly genuine about him. He wasn't fully corrupted yet. He still had humanity. Still had doubt. Still wanted love. And Emily saw that. That's why their chemistry worked initially. Not because they were soulmates, but because Daniel represented the possibility of another life. A different path. Sometimes viewers forget Emily originally did enjoy being with him. Not fully. Not honestly. But partially. Enough to make things messy. Enough to complicate her revenge. Because Daniel fell in love with the version of Emily she created for the world. Elegant. Sophisticated. Controlled. And for brief moments, she almost wanted to become that woman permanently. That's what made season 1 fascinating. Emily wasn't fully consumed yet. There were still pieces of Amanda Clark fighting underneath. But then the Grayson corruption infected Daniel too. Slowly. Subtly. Like poison. And once he started becoming his parents, Emily's feelings started dying. Not instantly. But visibly. You could literally watch her emotional distance growing episode by episode. That relationship became colder. Sharper. More transactional. Daniel stopped being a person. He became part of the mission. And that was tragic in its own way. Because Daniel genuinely loved her far longer than he should have. Even after betrayal. Even after manipulation. Even after discovering pieces of the truth. Part of him still loved her. That's why his ending hurt so many people. Because by the time he died for her, he finally understood who she really was. And despite everything, he still chose to save her. That scene mattered because it proved something important. Emily inspired different kinds of love in different people. Jack loved the innocent girl from the past. Daniel loved the fantasy woman she pretended to be. But then there was Aiden. And Aiden loved the darkness too. That's the difference fans still argue about years later. Because Aiden was the only one who fully understood what revenge had done to her. Not theoretically. Personally. He lived it too. He knew obsession. Knew rage. Knew what it felt like waking up every morning with hatred keeping you alive. Jack could sympathize with Emily's pain. Aiden could recognize it. There's a massive difference between those two things. And the show quietly built that connection over time. Not through fantasy. Not through nostalgia. Through understanding. the kind born from surviving the same emotional war. Aiden didn't meet Amanda Clark before trauma. He met the version created by trauma. And he loved her anyway. That's why their chemistry felt different. He wasn't trying to rescue her. Wasn't trying to restore innocence. Wasn't trying to bring back the little girl from the beach. He accepted the woman standing in front of him exactly as she was. Broken, violent, manipulative, brilliant, damaged, lonely, dangerous, and somehow, he loved all of it, not despite those things, including them. That's what made their relationship feel more mature than her connection with Jack. Because real love isn't loving someone before life changes them. It's loving who they become after. And Aiden understood every ugly piece of Emily because he carried ugly pieces inside himself too. Their conversations felt different from the start. Sharper, deeper, more intimate. Because there were no illusions between them. No fantasy of innocence. No pretending. No idealized childhood memories. Just two deeply damaged people seeing each other clearly. And maybe that's why some viewers hated them together. Because Aiden forced audiences to accept what Emily had become. Jack allowed viewers to romanticize Amanda Clark. Aiden forced them to confront Emily Thorne. There's a reason so many emotional scenes between Emily and Aiden happened during moments of vulnerability rather than romance. Late-night conversations, confessions, fear, pain, shared silence. Because their connection wasn't built on destiny. It was built on recognition. They saw each other, completely, and for someone like Emily, that mattered more than innocence ever could. But tragedy was always built into their relationship. You could feel it immediately. Because revenge stories don't allow peace. Especially not for people who understand each other too well. And Aiden understood Emily in ways that made their relationship terrifyingly intimate. He knew what she was capable of. Knew how far she'd go. Knew how cold she could become. And instead of running away, he stayed. That's rare. Especially in a show where nearly everyone eventually feared Emily once they discovered the truth. Jack feared parts of her. Daniel feared parts of her. Even Nolan occasionally feared parts of her. But Aiden? He recognized those parts because he had them too. That's why many fans believe he was her true endgame. Not because he was healthier. Their relationship absolutely wasn't healthy. But because it was honest. Brutally honest. There's a scene many fans still remember where Emily admits things she could never fully say to Jack. Not because she trusted Aiden more necessarily, but because she didn't have to pretend around him. Imagine how exhausting Emily's life was emotionally. Every conversation carefully managed. Every emotion monitored. Every vulnerability hidden. Then suddenly there's one person who already understands the ugliness without explanation. That kind of emotional relief becomes addictive. And the deeper their relationship grew, the more obvious it became that Jack no longer truly fit into Emily's world. That realization hurt fans, because people wanted the childhood romance to survive. They wanted Amanda Clark rewarded with the simple happy ending she deserved. But simple endings stop existing once people survive enough pain. That's the uncomfortable truth the show slowly started revealing. Jack loved who Emily used to be. Aiden loved who she became. And those are not the same thing. Meanwhile, Jack's own life continued evolving. People ignore that part too often. They treat Jack like a romantic prize waiting for Emily to return. But Jack was changing independently. Growing independently. Building independently. Especially through his relationship with Amanda. Their relationship grounded him emotionally in ways Emily never did. That's why Amanda's death hit so hard. Because viewers realized something devastating afterward. Jack may have actually been happier with her. Not because their love was more epic, but because it was emotionally sustainable. There's a difference. Epic love burns bright. Sustainable love lets people breathe. And Jack could breathe with Amanda. He smiled more. Relaxed more. Dreamed more. With Emily, there was always emotional tension underneath everything. Always longing mixed with confusion. Always the feeling that something invisible stood between them. Because there was Emily herself, her trauma, her revenge, her transformation. Jack kept reaching for the girl he remembered. But Emily increasingly became someone else entirely. And honestly, that wasn't her fault. Trauma changes people permanently. Especially prolonged trauma. Especially childhood trauma. Especially trauma combined with obsession. Viewers sometimes criticize Emily for becoming cold, without acknowledging what her life actually looked like. Imagine spending years training yourself emotionally for vengeance. Imagine dedicating your identity to destruction. Imagine sacrificing normal relationships, honesty, vulnerability, stability, and morality for one singular mission. That kind of life rewires a person psychologically. You cannot simply return to innocence afterward. And Aiden understood that reality better than anyone, because he lived it too. That's why fans who preferred Aiden usually connected more with emotional realism, while fans who preferred Jack connected more with emotional idealism. Neither side was entirely wrong. That's what made the debate last so long. Because both relationships represented different emotional fantasies. Jack represented healing through returning home. Aiden represented healing through being fully understood. And those are two completely different kinds of love. But Season 4 complicated everything further. Because by then, Emily was exhausted. Emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. Revenge had consumed almost every piece of her life. People close to her suffered. People died. Relationships collapsed. Trust became impossible. And underneath all her control, you could feel Amanda Clark slowly breaking apart. That exhaustion changed the emotional dynamics of every relationship around her. Especially after Aiden's death. Because Aiden's death wasn't just tragic. It was narratively convenient. And fans noticed immediately. The writers removed the one person who truly matched Emily emotionally. Why? Because as long as Aiden existed, Jack could never fully make sense as the final choice. That's the uncomfortable truth many viewers still believe. Aiden's existence exposed the emotional gap between Emily and Jack too clearly. He understood her too completely, accepted her too deeply, matched her darkness too naturally. So once he died, the path back to Jack reopened. But even then, something felt off, and longtime viewers could feel it. The chemistry changed. Not entirely gone, but changed. Because Emily wasn't the same woman from Season 1 anymore. And Jack wasn't the same man either. Too much had happened. Too much pain. Too much blood. Too much deception. Childhood love works beautifully in stories where characters remain emotionally frozen. But revenge constantly transformed its characters through trauma. That made the ending emotionally complicated. Jack wanted peace. Emily barely remembered how peace felt. Jack wanted honesty. Emily had spent years surviving through lies. Jack wanted stability. Emily had become emotionally addicted to chaos. Those contradictions never fully disappeared. Which is why many fans finished the series feeling emotionally unsatisfied despite getting the expected ending. Because expected doesn't always mean earned. And deep down, a lot of viewers knew something painful. If Aiden had survived, Emily probably would have chosen him. Not because she loved Jack less, but because Aiden understood the version of herself she had become. And that version was real too. That's the tragedy fans still debate years later. Not who Emily loved most, but which version of herself each man loved. Jack loved Amanda Clark. Daniel loved Emily Thorne. Aiden loved both. And once you realize that, the entire story changes. Because suddenly the ending doesn't feel romantic anymore. It feels lonely. Like Emily chose safety after losing the only person who truly saw everything inside her. And maybe that's why fans still argue about it today. Not because they hated Jack, but because they remembered how alive Emily felt with Aiden. How understood she felt. How equal they felt. There was danger there. Darkness there. But there was also honesty. And honesty was rare in Emily's life. Painfully rare. By the end of the show, everyone around Emily loved a different version of her. But very few people loved all of them at once. And that realization changes everything when you rewatch the series. Because suddenly every small moment feels heavier. Every conversation feels sadder. Every smile feels temporary. You start noticing how often Emily looks emotionally exhausted around people who expect her to become Amanda Clark again. You start noticing how peaceful she seems during moments where she doesn't have to hide herself. And slowly, you begin understanding why so many fans never emotionally accepted the finale. Not because Jack was bad. Not because their history wasn't beautiful. But because history alone isn't always enough. Especially after people survive hell. And the deeper you analyze Emily's journey, the more one terrifying question starts haunting the entire story. What if revenge changed her so completely that the happy ending was impossible no matter who she chose? And that question becomes even more painful once you realize something else. Throughout the entire series, Emily never truly escaped loneliness. Not completely. Not even once. And maybe that was the real ending all along. Not romance. Not destiny. Just survival. And the terrifying part? The next realization makes the entire story even darker. Because once Jack finally learned the full truth about Amanda Clark, everything between them changed forever. And that's where the real emotional damage began. The worst part wasn't when Jack learned the truth. It was the look on his face after. Because in that exact moment, Emily finally realized something terrifying. The boy who once loved Amanda Clark was staring at Emily Thorne like he didn't know her anymore. And for the first time in years, revenge stopped feeling powerful. It started feeling lonely. If you've ever loved a character so much that watching them self-destruct actually hurt, subscribe. Because this is where the emotional damage truly begins. Jack stood frozen near the dock. The ocean behind him moved violently against the wood pilings, waves crashing harder than usual, but neither of them noticed. Because the real storm was standing between them. Emily could hear her own breathing. Slow. Controlled. Years of training had taught her how to survive panic without showing it. But Jack looked like someone had ripped reality apart in front of him. His eyes kept moving across her face desperately. Like he was searching for the little girl he once knew. Like maybe if he stared long enough, Amanda Clark would suddenly reappear. But she didn't. Because the woman standing in front of him wore expensive clothes, carried secrets like weapons, and had destroyed lives with a level of precision that terrified even herself sometimes. And Jack was finally seeing all of it. "You lied to me," he whispered. Not angry. Not yet. That was what made it worse. He sounded heartbroken. Emily swallowed carefully. "Jack." "No." He stepped backward immediately. Instinctively. Like getting closer to her suddenly felt dangerous. "No, don't do that. Please just let me explain." "Explain what?" His voice cracked violently now. "You let me mourn you." That hit harder than yelling ever could have. Because she had no defense against it. None. Jack laughed once. A horrible laugh. Empty. Disbelieving. "I stood at your grave." Emily closed her eyes briefly. And suddenly memories flooded back too fast. A child's bicycle near the beach. Sand between her toes. Her father laughing. Jack smiling at her under summer sunlight. Then prison bars. Screaming. Loneliness. Cold training rooms. Fake identities. Pain. Blood. Years disappearing into hatred. When she opened her eyes again, Jack still looked devastated. "You have any idea what that did to me?" he asked quietly. "I was a kid. So was I." The silence afterward felt unbearable. Because this was the part Emily never planned for. Not really. Revenge plans account for enemies. Not grief. Not love. Not people looking at you like you murdered their memories. Jack turned away suddenly, rubbing both hands over his face aggressively. Jesus Christ. Emily took one careful step toward him. I wanted to tell you. When? He turned sharply. When exactly, Emily? Or Amanda? Hell, I don't even know what to call you anymore. That sentence cut deeper than anything. The terrifying part wasn't that Jack had figured Emily out. It wasn't even that he knew she had lied. The terrifying part was how calm he became afterward. Because the moment people stop yelling, that's when the real damage starts. And Emily didn't realize it yet. But Jack Porter had already begun pulling away emotionally long before she noticed. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, which somehow hurt even more. Loudspeaker short CT. If you've ever watched a relationship collapse in slow motion, you already know this feeling. Subscribe for more emotional revenge breakdowns and cinematic chaos stories. Because this is where everything starts breaking. The first thing Emily noticed was the silence. Not complete silence. Jack still answered calls, still showed up, still talked. But emotionally, something had changed. It was subtle enough that most people wouldn't catch it. But Emily noticed immediately because she had spent her entire life studying behavior, studying weakness, studying emotional shift. And Jack's energy around her felt colder, controlled, measured, like every word passed through a filter before reaching her. At first she tried convincing herself she was imagining it. Trauma makes people paranoid, especially someone like Emily, a woman who had spent years expecting betrayal from every direction. But then the small things started happening. Tiny details, the kind that individually meant nothing, until they started stacking together. Jack stopped lingering during conversations, stopped looking at her the same way, stopped smiling naturally. Even his body language changed. There used to be softness around her, comfort. Now there was distance, like some invisible wall had appeared between them overnight. And the worst part? He never mentioned it, never confronted her again, never exploded, never demanded answers. That silence started eating at her. Because anger was manageable. Emily knew how to survive anger. She knew how to manipulate it, deflect it, control it. But emotional withdrawal? That terrified her. Because once people emotionally detach, you lose access to them. And Emily suddenly realized something horrifying. For the first time in years, she didn't know what Jack was thinking. That loss of control immediately triggered her survival instincts. So she did what Emily Thorne always did when uncertainty appeared. She investigated. At first it was small, observational, careful. She noticed Jack spending more time at the stowaway, more late nights, more quiet conversations with Nolan, more moments where he abruptly stopped talking when she entered rooms. And every single one of those moments sharpened the anxiety growing inside her chest. Because Emily understood something most people don't. People don't suddenly stop loving you. They slowly reorganize their emotional world without you. And once that process starts, reversing it becomes nearly impossible. Still, she tried. God, she tried. That's what made this part of the story so painful. Emily Thorne, the woman capable of dismantling billion-dollar families, suddenly became emotionally desperate over one man pulling away from her. Because despite everything, Jack mattered differently. He always had. Not because he was perfect, not because they had the healthiest relationship, but because he represented the last surviving piece of Amanda Clark's original life. Losing him felt like losing the final proof that Amanda Clark had ever truly existed. And deep down, Emily was terrified that Jack finally saw what she had become clearly enough to stop loving her completely. That fear infected everything. Her sleep, her focus, her judgment. Even Nolan noticed it. One night he found her sitting alone inside the beach house staring at her untouched drink. "You've been staring at that glass for 10 minutes. Emily barely reacted. "That long?" "Yes." Nolan studied her carefully. What happened? Nothing. Emily. She closed her eyes briefly. He's different. Nolan sighed immediately because he already knew who she meant. Jack. He won't say it. Say what? That he hates me now. Nolan leaned against the counter quietly. I don't think he hates you. That's worse. She looked up at him then. Finally vulnerable. Finally honest. He looks at me like he's trying to understand whether Amanda Clark is still in there somewhere. The room went quiet, because Nolan understood exactly what she meant. And honestly, that question haunted everyone around her eventually, including Emily herself. Meanwhile, Jack was unraveling privately too. That's the tragedy people overlook. Viewers often analyze Emily's pain in detail while forgetting how psychologically devastating the truth was for Jack. Imagine discovering the woman you loved as a child survived unimaginable trauma, then transformed herself into someone almost unrecognizable. Imagine realizing every interaction you'd had for years contained hidden manipulation. Imagine learning that while you were mourning Amanda Clark, she was standing right beside you pretending to be someone else. That kind of revelation fractures trust permanently. And Jack didn't know how to process it, because part of him still loved her desperately. But another part felt betrayed so deeply, he couldn't even organize the emotion properly. That conflict started poisoning his behavior. Quietly, dangerously, he became emotionally unpredictable. One moment warm, next moment distant, one moment nostalgic, next moment cold, and Emily could feel every fluctuation, which made her anxiety spiral harder. Then came the first strange event. At first it seemed insignificant. A simple missing photograph. That's all. Emily had kept an old childhood picture hidden inside a drawer at the beach house. One of the only surviving photos of her and Jack as children. She checked the drawer late one evening, and it was gone. Immediately her pulse spiked. Because Emily never misplaced important things. Never. Especially emotional artifact. She searched the room twice, then 3 times. Nothing. And suddenly something about the missing photo felt deliberate. Personal. Targeted. She called Nolan first. Did you move anything from the beach house? No. A photo's missing. What kind of photo? Old one. Silence. Then Nolan's voice lowered carefully. You think Jack took it? I don't know. But she did know. Or at least part of her believed it instinctively. Because the missing photo didn't feel random. It felt symbolic. Like someone removing the memory itself. That night Emily barely slept. And around 2:13 a.m., her phone vibrated. Unknown number. Normally she ignored unknown calls. This time she answered instantly. Silence. Then breathing. Slow breathing. Emily's expression hardened immediately. Who is this? Nothing. Then the line disconnected. Her chest tightened. Again? The phone rang immediately afterward. Same unknown number. This time she stayed silent first. 3 seconds passed. Then a distorted voice whispered. Does he still recognize you? Click. Gone. Emily stood frozen in the darkness. Every survival instinct inside her activated instantly. Because that wasn't random harassment. That sentence was targeted with surgical precision. Does he still recognize you? Not, who are you? Not, you're a liar. Not threats. Not blackmail. Recognition. Identity. Amanda Clark versus Emily Thorne. Whoever made that call understood the psychological pressure points perfectly. And suddenly Emily realized something terrifying. Someone else knew. Or at least knew enough. The next morning she went straight to Nolan. He listened carefully while typing rapidly across multiple screens. No location trace? Burner line, Nolan said. No recordings? Already wiped. Emily paced. Someone's watching. Or someone wants you to think they are. That call wasn't random. I know. Nolan stopped typing. Did Jack say anything strange recently? Emily hesitated. No. But even as she answered, doubt twisted inside her. Because suddenly every strange interaction with Jack felt suspicious. Every silence, every distant look, every unfinished sentence. Paranoia began spreading through her thoughts like poison. And paranoia is catastrophic for people already carrying trauma. Because once fear attaches itself to uncertainty, everything starts looking dangerous. That's exactly what happened next. Over the following days, the strange events multiplied. Not dramatic enough for certainty, just enough to destabilize her psychologically. Her security system glitched twice. Someone entered her Hamptons house while nothing was stolen. A childhood song played briefly through her car speakers before cutting out. Flowers arrived anonymously. White roses. The same flowers David Clark once gave her mother. No note attached. Emily's emotional stability started cracking visibly. Sleep deprivation made everything worse. She became sharper, colder, more reactive. Even Nolan started getting worried. "This isn't like you." "No," she admitted quietly. "It's not." Because usually Emily controlled chaos. Now chaos felt like it was controlling her. And meanwhile, Jack continued acting emotionally detached. That part hurt most, because every strange event pushed Emily emotionally closer toward him, while he seemed to be drifting further away. Then came the second event, the worse one, the event that shifted everything from paranoia to fear. It happened during a charity gathering, one of those polished Hamptons events filled with fake smiles and expensive lies. Emily almost didn't attend, but appearances still mattered. They always mattered. She arrived dressed perfectly, controlled perfectly, elegant as always, and for the first 30 minutes, everything felt normal. Then Charlotte approached her looking pale. "Emily." Something in her voice immediately felt wrong. "What happened?" Charlotte hesitated. "There's someone here asking questions about Amanda Clark." Emily's heartbeat stopped for half a second. "What kind of questions?" "They showed me a photo." Every sound around Emily suddenly felt distant. "What photo?" Charlotte swallowed hard. "You and Jack as kids." Ice flooded Emily's stomach instantly. Because that was the missing photo. How old was the person? Late 30s maybe. Man or woman? Man. "Where is he?" "I don't know. He disappeared." Emily immediately scanned the crowd. Every face suddenly looked threatening. Unknown. Dangerous. Her breathing sharpened. And then her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She answered instantly. This time the voice sounded clearer. Calmer. "He misses the girl you used to be." Click. Gone again. Emily's hands actually shook. Not visibly. No. But it came too fast. Too defensive. And both of them noticed. Because, honestly, the thought had already crossed her mind. Not fully. Not rationally. But enough to poison certainty. Jack had access to memories. Access to emotional details. Access to old recordings potentially. And worst of all, his emotional withdrawal lined up perfectly with the chaos beginning. That coincidence started infecting her thoughts. Trauma does that. Once trust fractures, suspicion spreads everywhere. Still, some part of her refused to believe it. Because if Jack was behind this, then Amanda Clark truly had nowhere left emotionally to go. And that realization felt unbearable. Then came the social damage. The part where private chaos began bleeding publicly. First it was whispers. Small ones. People suddenly looking at Emily differently during events. Questions lingering too long. Conversations stopping when she approached. Then online gossip appeared. Anonymous forum posts discussing Amanda Clark theories. Old photos resurfacing. Speculation. Conspiracy threads. Nothing concrete. Just enough smoke to create anxiety. And Hampton's society thrived on whispers. Emily could feel the shift immediately. People became curious around her instead of admiring. Observant instead of trusting. That social tension triggered old survival instincts fast. She started isolating again. monitoring everyone, analyzing every interaction, and the emotional pressure kept building. Then one afternoon, Charlotte arrived visibly panicked. "You need to see this." She handed Emily her phone. Anonymous account. Fresh upload. A blurry childhood photo of Amanda Clark and Jack standing on the beach. Caption: "Some people fall in love with ghosts." Emily went cold instantly. Because this wasn't random anymore. This was controlled escalation. Public escalation. And whoever was doing it understood timing perfectly. Charlotte looked terrified. Who's doing this? Emily couldn't answer. Because suddenly she wasn't sure anymore. Not truly. Her mind kept circling the same horrifying realization repeatedly. This attacker knew too much emotionally. Too much personally. Too much intimately. Which meant one thing. It had to be someone close. Someone who understood Amanda Clark. Someone who understood Jack. Someone who understood Emily's deepest fears. And slowly, one impossible thought started becoming unavoidable. What if this wasn't about revenge at all? What if this was about forcing Emily to confront herself? That idea terrified her more than exposure ever could. Because she had spent years avoiding exactly that confrontation. And now someone seemed determined to drag Amanda Clark back into the light piece by piece, no matter how painful it became. That night Emily drove to the beach alone. Cold wind crashed against the shore violently. The same beach, the same ocean, the same memories, and suddenly she felt it fully for the first time. Disorientation. Not physical, existential, like her identities were collapsing into each other uncontrollably. Amanda Clark, Emily Thorne, victim, avenger, liar, lover, monster, survivor. Which one was real anymore? And then her phone vibrated again. Unknown number. This time she answered silently. The voice whispered only one sentence. "You built Emily Thorne so well. Even you forgot Amanda was still alive." Click. Gone. Emily stood frozen beside the ocean for nearly a full minute afterward. Breathing hard. Heart racing. Mind unraveling. Because suddenly, for the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of being exposed. She was afraid the voice might actually be right. And somewhere deep inside herself, Amanda Clark was beginning to wake up again. Which meant only one thing. Something was seriously wrong. The worst kind of fear isn't fear of danger. It's fear that the danger already got inside your head. Because once that happens, every memory becomes suspicious. Every silence feels calculated. Every coincidence starts looking like evidence. And standing alone beside the ocean that night, Emily finally understood something horrifying. This wasn't random chaos anymore. Someone was rebuilding Amanda Clark piece by piece, while simultaneously destroying Emily Thorne. And the deeper she looked into it, the more terrifying the pattern became. Loudspeaker short CT. If you love slow-burn psychological revenge stories where every clue matters, subscribe now. Because from this point forward, nothing is accidental anymore. The next morning Emily barely recognized herself in the mirror. Dark circles beneath her eyes. Tension locked into her jaw. Exhaustion buried underneath expensive makeup and practiced control. For years she had mastered the art of appearing untouchable. Now the cracks were visible. And she hated it. Not because she feared looking weak. Because weakness attracted predators. That lesson had been carved into Amanda Clark long before Emily Thorne ever existed. The strange thing was, part of her no longer knew which version of herself was more exhausted. Amanda, or Emily. She stood motionless inside the bathroom for nearly a minute before finally hearing Nolan downstairs. "You alive up there?" "Barely." She walked down slowly. Nolan immediately studied her expression carefully. "That bad?" "Worse." "Any sleep?" "No." "Calls?" She nodded once. "Messages too." Nolan exhaled heavily. "This is becoming organized." It already was. He placed coffee in front of her gently. "You need to think rationally now. I am thinking rationally. No, Nolan said quietly. You're thinking emotionally. That sentence irritated her immediately because it was true. Emily hated when emotions interfered with precision. And lately? Precision was disappearing. The messages were working. Not because they threatened her. Because they forced her into emotional territory she had spent years avoiding. Nolan opened a tablet. I've been tracking timestamps. Emily frowned slightly. What? The calls. Messages. Uploads. Forum activity. Her eyes sharpened immediately. What did you find? Nolan turned the screen toward her. At first I thought it was random scheduling. It's not. No. He zoomed further. Every single contact attempt lined up with emotionally significant date. Emily's stomach tightened instantly. This one, Nolan said quietly. The missing photograph appeared on the anniversary of David Clark's arrest. Another swipe. The white roses arrived the same day your mother died. Another swipe. The childhood recording was sent exactly 20 years after your first summer with Jack. Silence. Heavy silence. Emily stared at the screen without speaking. Because suddenly the attacks felt even more intimate than before. Not random harassment. Memory architecture. Someone was rebuilding her life chronologically. And whoever it was, knew details almost nobody alive should know. Nolan's voice lowered carefully. This isn't somebody improvising. Emily nodded slowly. No. This person planned this for a long time. Another realization hit her instantly afterward. No. What? She looked up at Nolan. They're not targeting Emily Thorne. Nolan went still. They're targeting Amanda Clark. The realization changed the entire situation immediately. Because suddenly the emotional precision made sense. Every message, every symbol, every recording, everything focused on identity restoration, not destruction. Whoever orchestrated this wanted Amanda Clark emotionally exposed again. And that possibility terrified Emily more than any threat ever had. Because Emily Thorne existed for one reason. Survival. Without Emily, Amanda Clark had nothing protecting her anymore. No emotional armor. No constructed identity. No controlled distance. Just grief. Trauma. Loneliness. Nolan watched realization spread across her face slowly. You think this is psychological? Emily laughed once bitterly. Everything about this is psychological. Then suddenly, another thought hit her. Sharp enough to physically freeze her in place. Jack. The timing. The emotional language. The beach memories. The childhood references. The identity conflict. Too many pieces connected. Too many. Nolan noticed instantly. You're thinking about him again. Emily looked away immediately. I can't. But you are. Her voice became quieter. If it's Jack. She couldn't finish the sentence. Because the emotional devastation behind that possibility felt unbearable. If Jack orchestrated this, then every remaining safe memory in her life would become poisoned permanently. But Nolan spoke carefully. There's another possibility. Emily looked up. This could be someone trying to turn you against Jack. That thought landed heavily. Because, emotionally, it was working. And suddenly Emily realized something even more disturbing. She had already started watching Jack differently. Questioning pauses. Analyzing expressions. Searching for signs. The paranoia was spreading exactly as intended. Which meant whoever planned this understood manipulation extremely well. Maybe too well. Then Nolan asked the question neither wanted answered. Who taught you psychological warfare this effectively? Emily's silence became the answer. Because there was only one truthful response. She did. Years ago. During revenge training. Isolation conditioning. Emotional destabilization tactics. Memory association manipulation. Identity pressure. The techniques being used against her felt terrifyingly familiar. Whoever orchestrated this either learned from the same world she did, or learned directly from someone connected to it. and suddenly the room felt colder. That afternoon Emily visited the beach house alone again. Not because she wanted nostalgia, because she needed answers. The house felt different now. Not physically, emotionally. Like memory itself had infected the walls. Every object suddenly looked important. Every old drawer looked suspicious. Every forgotten artifact felt dangerous. She began searching methodically. Boxes, closets, storage compartments, old furniture, anything connected to Amanda Clark's childhood. Hours passed. Dust covered her hands. Frustration sharpened. Nothing. Then, finally, inside an old wooden chest hidden beneath spare blankets, she found something. A tape recorder. Old, worn, half broken. Emily froze immediately. Because she recognized it. Jack. They used to record messages as children during summers together. Small memories. Beach sounds. Stupid conversations. Promises. Emily slowly picked it up. And suddenly flashbacks crashed into her so violently she almost lost balance. Sunlight. Warm sand. Jack laughing beside her. "You're recording already? You said this was important. We're literally digging holes." Amanda grinned. "Future US will care." Jack rolled his eyes dramatically. "Future US sounds annoying. You'll miss me someday." "Never. You don't know that." "I do." Ocean wind. Children laughing. The sound of innocence before destruction arrived. Emily shut her eyes hard. Pain flooded her chest instantly. Because memory had become dangerous now. Every flashback felt like emotional sabotage. Still, she pressed play carefully. Static crackled first. Then voices. Children again. Amanda laughing. Jack speaking softly. Then suddenly, another voice. Adult male. Distorted slightly. "You should have stayed Amanda Clark." Emily physically froze. The tape stopped. Her heartbeat slammed violently against her ribs. Because that recording shouldn't exist. It was impossible. Someone edited the tape afterward. Recently. Which meant someone had physical access to childhood artifacts. Not just digital archives. Actual objects. Emily immediately called Nolan. "I found something." "What?" "A tape recorder." "Where?" "Beach house." "Don't touch anything else." "Too late." "Emily." "The voice is on the tape." Silence. Then Nolan's tone sharpened. "I'm coming over." By evening the entire situation escalated again. Nolan analyzed the recorder carefully while Emily paced restlessly nearby. "The modification is recent." "How recent?" "Last few weeks maybe." Emily's stomach twisted. "So somebody entered the house?" "Yes." "And knew exactly where to search?" "Yes." That answer frightened her more than anything else so far. Because the beach house wasn't just symbolic. It was intimate. Sacred. The emotional center of Amanda Clark's childhood. Which meant whoever orchestrated this understood emotional geography too. The white roses arrived the same day your mother died. Another swipe. The childhood recording was sent exactly 20 years after your first summer with Jack. Silence. Heavy silence. Emily stared at the screen without speaking. Because suddenly the attacks felt even more intimate than before. Not random harassment. Memory architecture. Someone was rebuilding her life chronologically. And whoever it was, knew details almost nobody alive should know. Nolan's voice lowered carefully. "This isn't somebody improvising." Emily nodded slowly. "No. This person planned this for a long time." Another realization hit her instantly afterward. "No." "What?" She looked up at Nolan. "They're not targeting Emily Thorne." Nolan went still. "They're targeting Amanda Clark." The realization changed the entire situation immediately. Because suddenly the emotional precision made sense. Every message, every symbol, every recording, Everything focused on identity restoration, not destruction. Whoever orchestrated this wanted Amanda Clark emotionally exposed again. And that possibility terrified Emily more than any threat ever had. Because Emily Thorne existed for one reason: survival. Without Emily, Amanda Clark had nothing protecting her anymore. No emotional armor. No constructed identity. No controlled distance. Just grief. Trauma. Loneliness. Nolan watched realization spread across her face slowly. You think this is psychological? Emily laughed once bitterly. Everything about this is psychological. Then suddenly, another thought hit her, sharp enough to physically freeze her in place. Jack. The timing. The emotional language. The beach memories. The childhood references. The identity conflict. Too many pieces connected. Too many. Nolan noticed instantly. You're thinking about him again. Emily looked away immediately. I can't. But you are. Her voice became quieter. If it's Jack. She couldn't finish the sentence, because the emotional devastation behind that possibility felt unbearable. If Jack orchestrated this, then every remaining safe memory in her life would become poisoned permanently. But Nolan spoke carefully. There's another possibility. Emily looked up. This could be someone trying to turn you against Jack. That thought landed heavily, because, emotionally, it was working. And suddenly Emily realized something even more disturbing. She had already started watching Jack differently, questioning pauses, analyzing expressions, searching for signs. The paranoia was spreading exactly as intended, which meant whoever planned this understood manipulation extremely well. Maybe too well. Then Nolan asked the question neither wanted answered. Who taught you psychological warfare this effectively? Emily's silence became the answer. Because there was only one truthful response. She did. Years ago. During revenge training. Isolation conditioning. Emotional destabilization tactics. Memory association manipulation. Identity pressure. The techniques being used against her felt terrifyingly familiar. Whoever orchestrated this either learned from the same world she did, or learned directly from someone connected to it. And suddenly the room felt colder. That afternoon Emily visited the beach house alone again. Not because she wanted nostalgia, because she needed answers. The house felt different now. Not physically, emotionally. Like memory itself had infected the walls. Every object suddenly looked important. Every old drawer looked suspicious. Every forgotten artifact felt dangerous. She began searching methodically. Boxes, closets, storage compartments, old furniture, anything connected to Amanda Clark's childhood. Hours passed. Dust covered her hands. Frustration sharpened. Nothing. Then, finally, inside an old wooden chest hidden beneath spare blankets, she found something. A tape recorder. Old, worn, half broken. Emily froze immediately. Because she recognized it. Jack. They used to record messages as children during summers together. Small memories. Beach sounds. Stupid conversations. Promises. Emily slowly picked it up. And suddenly flashbacks crashed into her so violently she almost lost balance. Sunlight. Warm sand. Jack laughing beside her. You're recording already? You said this was important. We're literally digging holes. Amanda grinned. Future US will care. Jack rolled his eyes dramatically. Future US sounds annoying. You'll miss me someday. Never. You don't know that. I do. Ocean wind. Children laughing. The sound of innocence before destruction arrived. Emily shut her eyes hard. Pain flooded her chest instantly. Because memory had become dangerous now. Every flashback felt like emotional sabotage. Still, she pressed play carefully. Static crackled first. Then voices. Children again. Amanda laughing. Jack speaking softly. Then suddenly, another voice. Adult male. Distorted slightly. You should have stayed Amanda Clark. Emily physically froze. The tape stopped. Her heartbeat slammed violently against her ribs. Because that recording shouldn't exist. It was impossible. Someone edited the tape afterward. Recently. Which meant someone had physical access to childhood artifacts. Not just digital archives. Actual objects. Emily immediately called Nolan. I found something. What? A tape recorder. Where? Beach house. Don't touch anything else. Too late. Emily. The voice is on the tape. Silence. Then Nolan's tone sharpened. I'm coming over. By evening, the entire situation escalated again. Nolan analyzed the recorder carefully while Emily paced restlessly nearby. The modification is recent. How recent? Last few weeks, maybe. Emily's stomach twisted. So somebody entered the house. Yes. And knew exactly where to search. Yes. That answer frightened her more than anything else so far. Because the beach house wasn't just symbolic. It was intimate. Sacred. The emotional center of Amanda Clark's childhood. Which meant whoever orchestrated this understood emotional geography too. Not just facts. Meaning. That level of understanding narrowed possibilities dramatically. Then Nolan noticed something else. Wait. What? He rewound part of the tape. Static. Ocean sounds. Then faintly beneath background noise. Music. Very quiet. Emily frowned. What is that? Nolan increased volume. The melody sharpened slightly. And suddenly Emily's face drained of color completely. Because she recognized it immediately. A piano piece. Played years ago inside Takeda's training facility. A song almost nobody connected to her revenge life should know existed. Nolan looked stunned. That's impossible. Emily whispered quietly. No. Because now two separate worlds were overlapping. Amanda Clark's childhood. Emily Thorne's revenge training. Whoever orchestrated this wasn't just exposing her identity. They were connecting every version of her together deliberately. Amanda. Emily. The weapon. The survivor. The child. The avenger. All collapsing toward each other. And suddenly Emily understood the true objective behind the psychological attack. Integration. Forced integration. Someone wanted Emily Thorne emotionally dismantled until only Amanda Clark remained underneath. That realization terrified her because she wasn't sure Amanda could survive fully exposed anymore. Not after everything she had become. That night Emily finally did something she'd been avoiding for days. She went to Jack. Not strategically. Not manipulatively. Honestly. And maybe that's why the conversation hurt so much. Jack opened the door slowly. His expression immediately changed when he saw her. You look exhausted. I am. Silence lingered briefly. Then he stepped aside. Emily entered quietly. The stowaway felt warm. Normal. Almost painfully normal. Which somehow made her feel more broken. Jack waited. Finally she spoke. Someone's been inside the beach house. His expression tightened immediately. What? They altered old recordings. Who? I don't know. Jack stared carefully. Then quietly. You think it's me. Emily looked down instantly. And that silence answered for her. Pain crossed his face immediately. Not anger. Pain. You actually think I'd do this to you? I don't know what to think anymore. Jack looked away toward the window. That's the problem. What is? You stopped trusting people so long ago that now everything looks like manipulation. That's not fair. No, he asked quietly. You analyze everyone like enemies. Because enemies exist. And sometimes people are just hurt. The sentence landed hard. Because suddenly Emily realized something devastating. Jack wasn't defending himself. He was describing their entire relationship. Years of emotional distance. Years of partial truth. Years of never fully trusting each other. Jack finally looked back at her. I spent years waiting for Amanda Clark. Emily's throat tightened instantly. And then, when I finally found her. His voice cracked slightly. She was already gone. Silence. Emily felt tears building again. Not dramatic tears. Exhausted ones. The kind born from hearing truths you've spent years avoiding. She's still here. Jack shook his head slowly. Sometimes I think you only let her out when you need something. That hurt because part of her feared it might be true. And Jack saw that fear immediately. He stepped closer carefully. I'm not your enemy, Amanda. The real name again. Soft this time. Sad. But I don't know how to reach you anymore. That sentence nearly broke her completely. Because suddenly all the revenge, all the lies, all the manipulation collapsed into one horrifying realization. Emily Thorne had become emotionally unreachable, even to people who loved her. Then Jack asked quietly, "What are you really afraid of?" Emily answered immediately, "That maybe whoever's doing this is right." Jack frowned slightly. "About what?" Her voice became almost a whisper. "That Amanda Clark disappeared a long time ago." Jack's expression changed instantly. Not coldness. Not judgment. Something worse. Recognition. And Emily saw it. He had wondered the same thing himself. That realization hollowed her out from the inside. After leaving the stowaway, Emily drove aimlessly for almost an hour. Rain hammered the windshield. Streetlights blurred across wet roads. And memories kept surfacing uncontrollably. Takeda training sessions. Childhood summers. David Clark smiling. Amanda dying emotionally piece by piece. Then Aiden. God. Aiden. Suddenly memories of him returned sharper than they had in years. Not romanticized. Painfully real. Aiden watching her after nightmares. Aiden understanding silence without explanation. Aiden never asking her to become softer than she was. And worst of all, Aiden recognizing darkness inside her without fear. The grief hit suddenly and violently. Because for the first time Emily realized something she had buried deep for years. Aiden may have been the only person who fully accepted both Amanda Clark and Emily Thorne simultaneously. Jack loved the girl from before. Aiden loved the woman after. And maybe that's why losing him destroyed something irreversible inside her emotionally. That realization shook her badly enough she had to pull the car over. Rain thundered around her. Breathing uneven. Heart racing. And suddenly another memory surfaced. One she hadn't thought about in years. Takeda once telling her quietly during training. The most dangerous revenge is the kind that forces a person to face themselves. Emily's blood went cold instantly. Because that's exactly what was happening now. Not exposure. Reflection. Whoever orchestrated this wasn't trying to destroy Emily publicly first. They were psychologically cornering her privately. Forcing confrontation. Forcing identity collapse. Forcing Amanda Clark and Emily Thorne into the same emotional space until something finally broke. And suddenly another horrifying possibility appeared. What if this entire thing was never about Jack at all? What if Jack was just emotional leverage? Because the attacks always intensified after moments involving him. Which meant the orchestrator understood one terrifying truth. Jack represented Amanda Clark's last emotional anchor. Remove that, and Emily Thorne destabilized completely. That realization changed the investigation entirely. Because suddenly the question became, who benefits from emotionally dismantling Emily? And unfortunately, the answer list was enormous. Old enemies. Surviving Grayson connections. People damaged during her revenge. Former allies. Even people connected to Takeda's world. Emily had destroyed too many lives to count. And now, someone appeared to be returning the favor with terrifying patience. The next clue arrived unexpectedly. 3 days later. Through Nolan. He burst into Emily's house visibly shaken. "You need to see this now." She immediately stood. "What happened?" Nolan handed her a printed document. Property records. Beachfront storage rental. Recently accessed. Under a fake name. Emily scanned the page quickly. Then froze. because the fake identity used a detail only one small group of people would recognize. A reference to an old childhood phrase Amanda and Jack once used together privately. Her pulse spiked instantly. This was intentional. Yes. Where's the storage unit? Nolan hesitated. Before you go there. What? There's more. He handed over another page. Security footage stills. Blurry figure entering the unit repeatedly. Face hidden. But one detail stood out immediately. A scar across the hand. Emily's breathing stopped. Because she recognized it. Aiden had the same scar. For half a second the world genuinely tilted sideways. That's impossible. Nolan nodded slowly. I know. Because Aiden was dead. Emily watched him die. She remembered the blood, the grief, the aftermath. Impossible. Unless… No. It couldn't be. But the scar. The timing. The psychological precision. The understanding of both Amanda Clark and Emily Thorne. Suddenly every assumption shattered apart. And for the first time since the attacks began, Emily felt something even worse than fear. Hope. Terrifying hope. Because hope can destroy people faster than grief ever will. Especially hope connected to someone you already buried emotionally. Nolan spoke carefully. Emily. But she barely heard him. Her mind was already spiraling backward through years of memories. Aiden smiling slightly during training exercises. Aiden understanding her silence instinctively. Aiden once saying, if someone ever wanted to hurt you properly, they'd make you face who you are without revenge protecting you. Emily's blood ran cold. Because that sounded exactly like this. Exactly. And suddenly every emotional detail aligned too perfectly. The messages. The identity focus. The psychological warfare. The forced self-confrontation. This wasn't random revenge. This was personal. Deeply personal. Then Emily noticed something else in the footage. A reflection. Tiny. Easy to miss. But visible briefly in the storage window. A necklace. Infinity symbol. Her stomach dropped instantly. Because she gave that necklace to Aiden years ago. Nobody else should have it. Nobody. Nolan looked at her carefully. You know something. Emily whispered. No. But the denial sounded weak even to herself. Because deep down, something impossible was beginning to form. Something terrifying. Something emotionally catastrophic. And suddenly every piece of chaos from the past weeks stopped feeling random. Instead, it started looking like preparation. Preparation for something much larger. Much crueler. Much more personal. Then her phone vibrated again. Unknown number. This time only one message appeared. Almost ready. Emily stared at the screen silently. Heart pounding harder than ever before. Because suddenly she understood the real horror. The psychological attacks. The clues. The memories. The identity collapse. None of it was the actual revenge. It was only the setup. And whoever planned this was preparing for a final reveal devastating enough to shatter everything she still believed about herself. The scariest revenge isn't the kind that destroys your life. It's the kind that forces you to understand why you deserved to lose it. And standing there with Nolan, phone trembling in her hand, Emily finally understood something horrifying. Whoever orchestrated this never wanted to expose her. They wanted to dismantle her. Slowly. Carefully. Emotionally. Until Amanda Clark and Emily Thorne finally collided hard enough to destroy each other. And the worst part? It was working. Loudspeaker short CT. Before we finish this story, comment below. Who truly understood Emily best? Jack, Daniel, or Aiden? And if you love emotional revenge stories that feel painfully real, subscribe now. Because this ending? It changes everything. The message stayed on her screen. Almost ready. 3 words. That was all. But somehow those 3 words carried more terror than any threat ever could. Because now Emily finally understood what the previous weeks had actually been. Conditioning. Every call. Every memory, every emotional trigger, every carefully timed message. None of it had been random harassment. It was preparation. Psychological preparation. Someone had spent weeks tearing down Emily Thorne piece by piece, until Amanda Clark became emotionally exposed again. And now, the final step was coming. Nolan watched her carefully. You think it's him? Emily couldn't answer, because saying Aiden's name out loud felt dangerous somehow. Like speaking it might collapse whatever fragile grip she still had on reality. It can't be, Nolan continued quietly. I know. But part of you believes it. Emily finally looked up. What if I need to believe it? That answer scared Nolan immediately. Because hope connected to grief creates catastrophic decisions, and Emily was already emotionally unstable, sleep-deprived, paranoid, exhausted, vulnerable. Exactly the state someone would want her in before a final move. Nolan spoke carefully. We need to slow down. No. Emily. If this is connected to Aiden, I need answers now. And if someone wants you emotionally reckless? Her silence became the answer. Because deep down, she already knew that was exactly what was happening. Still, she couldn't stop anymore. The need for answers had become stronger than fear itself. That night they went to the storage unit. Rain fell softly across empty road. No traffic. No sound except tires moving across wet pavement. The world felt strangely still. Like something was waiting. Emily sat silently during the drive while memories kept replaying uncontrollably inside her head. Aiden smiling during training exercises. Aiden touching her face gently after nightmares. Aiden understanding parts of her nobody else ever fully could. Then his death. Blood. Shock. Grief. The unbearable emptiness afterward. For years she forced herself not to revisit those memories deeply. Because grief was dangerous. Grief weakened focus. And Emily Thorne survived by staying emotionally controlled. But now? Everything buried was surfacing again. Nolan parked carefully outside the facility. You ready? No. But she nodded anyway. The storage hallway felt cold and sterile. Metal doors. Buzzing lights. Silence pressing from every direction. Then they reached the unit. The lock was already open. Emily's pulse spiked immediately. Nolan moved first carefully. Inside, the room looked almost empty. Except for one thing. A television. Old-fashioned. Centered directly in the middle of the storage unit. Waiting. Emily stopped breathing for half a second. Because suddenly she understood this wasn't about evidence. It was theater. Carefully designed theater. Nolan noticed a small blinking light. A timer. Then the screen turned on by itself. Static crackled briefly. And suddenly, David Clark appeared. Young. Smiling. Old home footage. Emily physically froze. Her father laughed softly behind the camera. Amanda, stop running. Little Amanda's voice echoed somewhere off-screen. Catch me first. The footage continued. Family dinners. Beach days. Birthday moments. Fragments of a life destroyed years ago. Emily felt tears forming instantly. Not because of sadness alone. Because she realized what was happening. Someone had reconstructed her lost life. Every stolen memory. Every buried fragment. All deliberately collected. The footage suddenly changed. Now Takeda appeared. Training footage. Emily fighting. Bleeding. Learning. Transforming. Amanda Clark disappearing slowly frame by frame. Then Aiden appeared beside her. The screen paused there. Aiden looking directly toward camera. Alive. Real. Emily's heart nearly stopped. No. The image flickered. Then a voice filled the room. Calm. Familiar. Painfully familiar. You spent years punishing everyone who destroyed Amanda Clark. Emily went completely still. The voice continued. But you never noticed who destroyed her most completely. Aiden. It was Aiden's voice. Not edited. Not artificial. Real. Emily's breathing became uneven immediately. Nolan looked stunned beside her. That's impossible. The screen shifted again. Aiden sitting in darkness somewhere unknown. Older. Tired. Alive. Emily physically stumbled backward. No. Aiden stared directly into the camera. If you're seeing this, then the process worked. Emily couldn't think. Couldn't breathe properly. Couldn't process reality fast enough. Because Aiden was dead. She watched him die. She remembered the funeral. The grief. The blood. Unless she had been manipulated too. And then Aiden answered the question before she could form it. I survived. Emily's knees nearly gave out. Nolan grabbed her arm instantly. The video continued. You want to know why I disappeared? Aiden leaned forward slightly. Because Emily Thorne became more dangerous than the people she hated. Silence crushed the room. Emily stared at the screen in shock. Then anger exploded instantly. No. But Aiden continued calmly. You think revenge ended after the Graysons. Another pause. It didn't. Images flashed rapidly across screen. Destroyed lives. Collateral damage. People hurt during Emily's revenge campaign. Friends. Enemies. Innocent bystanders. Then came names. Faces. Consequences. Emily felt sick. Because suddenly she was seeing her revenge from outside herself for the first time. Not as justice. As damage. Aiden's voice softened slightly. I loved Amanda Clark. The sentence shattered her. But Emily Thorne. He paused. Would have burned the world forever if nobody stopped her. Emily's chest tightened violently. No. But deep down, part of her already understood. Because Jack had said something similar weeks ago. You don't know who you are without destruction. And suddenly every warning she ignored came rushing back. Takeda. Nolan. Jack. Even Daniel once. All of them saw pieces of the same truth eventually. Revenge had changed her permanently. And Aiden knew it best because he had walked the same darkness beside her. The screen changed again. Now showing hidden footage collected over years. Emily manipulating people. Threatening enemies. Watching lives collapse without emotional reaction. Moments she justified at the time. Moments that suddenly looked horrifying from another perspective. Aiden's voice returned. You think I betrayed you? Emily whispered through tears. You did. The screen paused again. Then Aiden answered quietly. No. Another image appeared. Emily alone after his supposed death. Emotionally numb. Obsessed again. Colder than ever. Aiden spoke softly. You stopped feeling human after enough people died around you. Then came the realization that shattered everything. The fake death. It wasn't escape. It was observation. Aiden disappeared deliberately to watch what Emily became afterward. And what he saw terrified him. That was the true revenge. Not punishment. Evaluation. He had been studying her for years. The messages. The recordings. The emotional breakdown. Everything was designed to force one outcome. Self-awareness. Emily's breathing became ragged. Because suddenly the horrifying scale of the plan became visible. This wasn't weeks of preparation. It was years. Years. Aiden knew exactly how her mind worked. Exactly which emotional wounds still controlled her. Exactly how to dismantle Emily Thorne psychologically. Because he helped build her survival instincts in the first place. And worst of all, he stayed 10 steps ahead emotionally the entire time. The video continued. I needed Amanda Clark to face Emily Thorne honestly. Another pause. Because nobody else could make her do it. Emily shook her head slowly. This isn't love. Aiden's expression changed painfully. No, he admitted. It's mercy. That word hit harder than any accusation ever could. Mercy. As if she had become something dangerous enough to require saving from herself. The rage inside her exploded instantly. You manipulated me. Yes. You destroyed me. No. Aiden's voice sharpened slightly for the first time. I showed you what you already became. The screen suddenly filled with every anonymous message she received. All together. And now Emily finally saw the hidden pattern. Each message corresponded not to moments of weakness, but moments where Amanda Clark disappeared emotionally. The clues had always been there. He wasn't attacking her identity randomly. He was mapping her transformation, tracking every point where revenge consumed another piece of her humanity. Then came the cruelest revelation. Jack knew. Not everything, but enough. Weeks ago, Emily stared at the screen in horror as footage appeared of Jack meeting secretly with someone hidden off camera. Aiden's voice returned. Jack still loved Amanda Clark. Pause. But he was terrified of Emily Thorne. Emily physically recoiled, because suddenly Jack's emotional distance made sense. Not betrayal, fear. Not fear she'd physically hurt him. Fear that revenge had emotionally hollowed her out completely. The screen shifted again. Now Jack spoke quietly during hidden footage. I don't know how to save her anymore. Aiden answered off camera. You can't. Emily felt something inside her finally crack, because suddenly she understood the devastating truth underneath everything. The people who loved her most had spent years quietly watching her disappear. And none of them knew how to stop it. Not Nolan. Not Jack. Not even Aiden. Until he created this entire psychological collapse deliberately. And the horrifying part? It worked. Because standing there now, Emily finally saw herself clearly for the first time in years. Not as victim. Not as avenger. As someone emotionally consumed by vengeance so completely she no longer recognized peace without chaos attached. The realization gutted her. Then came the final twist. The true twist. Aiden wasn't planning to return. Ever. This wasn't reunion. Closure. The screen showed Aiden sitting alone somewhere dark. Tired. Older. Broken in ways Emily hadn't noticed before. You once told me revenge was the only thing keeping you alive. His eyes lowered briefly. I believed that too. Silence filled the room. Then he looked back up. We were both wrong. Emily felt tears falling freely now. Because suddenly she understood. Aiden hadn't survived emotionally either. He disappeared because revenge destroyed him too. The difference was, he realized it first. And the entire elaborate plan? The manipulation? The emotional destruction? It wasn't about punishing Emily. It was about forcing her to stop before she became fully incapable of being Amanda Clark again. Then Aiden said the sentence that finally shattered her completely. If I stayed with you. His voice cracked slightly. We would have destroyed each other permanently. Emily broke. Not dramatically. Quietly. The kind of emotional collapse that happens when denial finally dies. Because deep down, she knew he was right. Their love was real. Painfully real. But it was built inside shared darkness. And eventually darkness consumes everything that stays inside it too long. That's why Aiden disappeared. Not because he stopped loving her. Because he loved her enough to finally walk away. And he knew she never would. The screen flickered one final time. Then Aiden spoke softly. You asked once who could ever love every version of you. Emily stared through tears silently. And Aiden smiled sadly. I did. Silence. Then. But loving someone isn't always enough to save them. The screen went black. Gone. Just like that. The room fell completely silent except for Emily's uneven breathing. Nolan didn't speak. Couldn't speak. Because there was nothing left to say. The revenge was complete. Not against Emily's life. Against her illusions. And suddenly she understood the horrifying brilliance of the entire plan. Aiden never tried destroying Emily publicly. He destroyed the emotional lies she used to survive privately. The belief that revenge made her strong. The belief that Emily Thorne protected Amanda Clark. The belief that she could endlessly survive through hatred without losing herself. Every message, every clue, every memory, every carefully timed emotional trigger. All designed for one purpose. To force Amanda Clark and Emily Thorne into the same room psychologically. And now they finally stood facing each other. No lies left. No revenge left. No mask left. Just truth. Painful truth. The drive back felt unreal. Emily barely spoke. Rain moved softly across windows while memories replayed endlessly inside her head. Jack's exhaustion. Nolan's worry. Takeda's warnings. Aiden's grief. All the signs had always existed. She simply couldn't see them while revenge still gave her purpose. That was the true trap. Hatred can become identity if you hold it long enough. And Emily had held it for years. By the time they reached the beach house, dawn was beginning. Soft gray light spread across the ocean slowly. Emily walked toward the shore alone. No weapons. No plans. No manipulation. Just silence. For the first time in years. Real silence. And standing there watching waves move against sand. Amanda Clark finally stopped running from herself. The memories came gently now. Not weaponized anymore. Just memories. Her father laughing. Childhood summers. Jack smiling beside her. Aiden understanding her darkness. Daniel sacrificing himself. Nolan refusing to abandon her. Even after everything. And suddenly Emily realized something devastatingly simple. She spent so many years trying to avenge her life that she forgot to actually live one. Tears rolled silently down her face. Not from grief alone. From acceptance. Because revenge never truly ends. It either consumes people completely, or they finally choose to let it die. And maybe that was the real reason Aiden disappeared. Not to punish her. To force her toward the choice he finally made himself. The ocean wind moved softly around her. And for the first time in years, Emily Thorne felt tired enough to stop fighting. Hours later Jack found her sitting alone on the beach. Neither spoke immediately. The silence felt different now. Softer. Jack sat beside her quietly. You know? Emily nodded once. He's alive. Yes. Another long silence passed. Then Jack asked carefully, How do you feel? Emily looked toward the horizon. Empty. Jack nodded slightly. Maybe that's where healing starts. Healing. Such a strange word. For years Emily viewed healing as weakness, as surrender. Now, it sounded peaceful. She finally looked at Jack. I don't know who I am without revenge. Jack answered gently. Then maybe you finally get to find out. That sentence stayed with her. Because for the first time, the future felt unwritten. Not controlled by grief. Not controlled by vengeance. Just uncertain. Human. And maybe that uncertainty was terrifying. But it was also honest. Weeks passed quietly afterward. The anonymous messages stopped. The calls ended. The chaos disappeared completely. Like a storm finally exhausting itself. Emily sold the Hamptons house eventually. Not dramatically. Quietly. No grand speeches. No revenge declarations. Just closure. Nolan noticed the change first. Smaller things. She laughed more naturally. Slept longer. Stopped monitoring everyone constantly. Even the way she spoke changed. Less calculated. Less guarded. Amanda Clark slowly resurfacing again. Not the innocent girl from childhood. That version was gone forever. But something real. Something human. One evening Nolan finally asked the question lingering between them for weeks. Do you hate him? Emily thought carefully before answering. No. Why not? She looked toward the ocean quietly. Because he was right. Nolan stayed silent. And deep down, they both knew that was the hardest truth of all. Aiden understood her deeply enough to realize revenge would never stop on its own. So he created the only ending powerful enough to break the cycle. Self-confrontation. Not destruction. Truth. Painful truth. And in the end, that truth saved her life. Months later Emily returned alone to the beach one final time. No phone. No weapons. No plans. Just ocean waves and silence. She closed her eyes briefly. And for the first time in years, Amanda Clark felt peaceful. Not healed completely. Some scars never disappear. But alive. Actually alive. And maybe that was enough. The wind moved softly across the shore. Then silence returned to the beach once again. Not lonely silence. Peaceful silence. The kind that only arrives after chaos finally ends. And somewhere far away, Aiden never came back. Because some people are meant to save your life, without staying in it forever. Sometimes revenge doesn't destroy your enemies first. Sometimes it destroys the version of you that existed before the pain. And the hardest battle isn't defeating the people who hurt you. It's finding yourself again afterward. Because eventually everyone must answer the same terrifying question. Who are you? When hatred is no longer guiding your life. If this story hit you emotionally, like the video, comment who Emily truly belonged with, Jack, Daniel, or Aiden, and subscribe for more cinematic Reddit revenge stories, emotional breakdowns, and psychological chaos endings.